Alright, I see we're going. Hello, everybody. This week on my YouTube channel, I will be reviewing an 80s classic, keeping the theme of this week of me graduating from college. And I know this might be a little much, and technically this movie isn't relevant because it's about two kids graduating from high school and pursuing a relationship, which is the 1989 classic Say Anything, starring John Cusack as the naively sweet young man Lloyd Dobler and Ione Skye as the brilliant student with an overbearing father. And this movie is probably one of the ones where I can just talk endlessly about how great it is. For one thing, there's one thing that they address in this movie. Now, as I said, these characters are kids that just graduated from high school, and unlike a lot of high school movies then and now, and even some before, they actually do spend a long time addressing the questions that many high schoolers will face once they graduate, which is, what are you going to do? Are you going to get a job? Are you going to join the military? Are you going to go to college? Or what are you going to do with your life? And that actually becomes the center of conflict between Diane and her father, because Lloyd, throughout a good chunk of the movie, wants to be a kickboxer, but he doesn't really have very bright, promising prospects to go off of. And that kind of leads us to the cliche of Diane's father thinking he's below her. And honestly, the disapproving dad cliche, it's done very well here, and you can understand why. And when it gets to the point where um, Lloyd and Diane break up, it's very much the father is forcing Diane to dump him, but the dad is also being audited by the IRS, and since Diane is very close to her father, she's emotionally torn between being with Lloyd and being with her dad, and because she has such a strong emotional tie to both men, she decides to choose her dad because she decided to choose her dad over her mom when she was 13 in a divorce hearing. And the movie, even though a lot of it is very 80s, is actually a very timeless movie. You know, it could take place in almost any decade, and the only thing that would be different is the soundtrack. The themes are timeless. And I also really relate to and see a lot of myself in the character of Lloyd Dobler, because he can be very sweet, he can be very caring, but then at the same time, he can also be kind of weird and kind of off. And he's also this very strong optimist, which I relate to a lot. And I do think that it is kind of funny how John Mahoney's in this movie and BB Newirth are in it. They're in a movie that takes place in Seattle, and then they would later have roles in a sitcom, Frasier, that generally takes place in Seattle. So I find that to be kind of funny. But then again, that's only funny now in hindsight. 1989, Frasier wasn't even around until 1993, so no one would have made that connection until after Frasier came out. The TV series, anyway. Um, and I think what I will say is that the movie, a lot of people say that this is one of the greatest high school movie of all time. I'm not sure if I could call it that. Not because the movie is bad. It is a great movie, but technically these kids are college students because they graduate in like the first 10 minutes of the movie. In fact, that's how the movie starts, them getting ready to go to graduation, actually. So I'm not really sure if I can consider it a high school movie since these kids are essentially rising freshmen in college. Or at least they're at that age. And I also like how the movie very much has this very strong coming of age kind of feel to it. Because, I mean, not to give away too much, but Diane actually confronts the IRS agents that are, you know, hounding her father, and she eventually learns why they're hounding him. I'm not going to give it away in case some of you out there see this review and get inspired to see the movie, but it is actually a very gut wrenching scene. because and that's really the charm of the movie is that the characters are written so well, they're so strong, they're so defined, and they're so likable that you're rooting for them every step of the way. And even Jim Court, Diane's father, he is kind of an asshole for being hard on Lloyd, but he does seem kind of like the likable, protective, tough father. But then when they reveal why the IRS is after him, then you kind of see him as this very shady kind of person, and you're almost just as shattered as Diane is when you hear this news. But all in all, the movie is a great film, and there's so many romantic comedies that rely on cliches and do nothing with the fact that they're just lazily repeating cliches. But this movie has heart, it has wit, it has charm, and it has a lot of love story cliches, but it does it in such a way where you feel like you're seeing these cliches for the first time, you know? Because it's so entertaining and so charismatic with what it's trying to get across that you're almost willing to make the argument that the cliches don't exist because you're so in love with the movie. And I think what some people forget is that just because a movie is cliche doesn't make it bad. If the movie is bad and has too many cliches to count, then the cliches are bad. But if a movie can make you overlook that or ignore them, then the movie's doing its job well. So this is actually my shortest review. So it's a great movie, right up there with Breakfast Club and Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and it almost feels kind of like a John Hughes movie. I guess Cameron Crowe was the second rate John Hughes who turned in a great movie. He also wrote Fast Times at Ridgemont High, which I think I'll review this summer as well for its 35th anniversary. So thank you all for watching, and next week I should be reviewing Deadpool 2, but I'm not quite sure. It depends on whether or not I actually get to the theater next weekend to see it. So until then, be on the lookout for my Blue Oyster Cult cover this Tuesday. See ya.